word disciple literally means learner. And kind of like your question earlier of how do you build intimacy? When you're young, you're learning everything. But the older you get, the lie or the pride that creeps up in you is that I'm an adult. I should know the answer. We should know how to do this. And so when you see couples that have been married 20, 30 years lose intimacy and part ways, a lot of it is because they've stopped being learners.
Katie and Josh, welcome to the happy hour.
Come on.
Thanks. We're so happy to be here.
This is so great. I say this all the time with people that, well, I shouldn't say that. I say this all the time. I wish we were having a happy hour in person. That would make this 100 times better. But here we are, and I'm glad you're here. This is both of your first time on the happy hour, so I'd love for you to introduce yourselves.
Well, we are so grateful for this opportunity. You want to introduce us?
Sure. So this is Katie Walters. She's my favorite person. No, we've been married just over 20 years now. We have 7 children. Have lived in Charleston.
In the game with the Ivey.
Well, you have passed this up, but I think once you get to 4, though, you could have 17.
100%.
Yeah,
that's exactly what I always say. 4, I was beyond capacity.
Yeah.
So
there's kind of a factor at play, and that they start buddying up, and it almost feels like less on you, but people don't believe us.
I actually believe you on that one. Yes.
Yeah. So we've been here at Seacoast for about 15 years now, same as in the Charleston area.
Seacoast Church. That's where we're sitting right now. So
yay. And Josh, are you the head pastor there?
Nope, I'm the executive pastor, so oversee our experience, everything that happens in person and online.
That's awesome. And Katie, what do you do in your life when you're not taking care of 7 kids?
So when I'm not taking care of 7 kids, or this guy right here. I was about to say,
or your other big
or Josh, I lead Francis Benedict, which is a fashion line out of Togo, West Africa. So we actually have a nonprofit and a for-profit. And Josh actually started taking over the nonprofit about a year ago, helping me with that, and so that I could focus on sales and the for-profit. So that's my full-time job when we're not also meeting with lots of people in their marriage. And that's really, working here at Seacoast the past 15 years has just afforded us such an opportunity. We came in so broken, and we've pretty much stayed that way, and been able to be vulnerable, be broken, and then serve people as much as we could.
No.
So
it was the sweetest place to start ministry for me, and that just as a man, it was the first time being able to come here, your marriage being the most precious thing to you, and you realize that you are what got you there in part. And so you can't just build it. So being able to come here and need the church to be the church for us and see us be loved, cared for, see God restore us. It really let us both serve out of a place where we were like really free and known for the first time. We've been able to stay in that.
That's really beautiful. And I think there is this sense of, Paul talks about this, about really using our brokenness and our weakness to really serve the Lord. And you guys have alluded to that. And I'd love to for you guys to share a little bit about your story. You have a book coming out this month, New Marriage, Same Couple, and which I love the title, by the way. And it's really a book of like your story, but also full of hope and what marriage can be and should be, and how God can restore things that are broken continually in our lives. And I think as I was thinking about talking to you today, and I want to give you a moment to share a part of your story, as I was thinking about this conversation that we're going to have today, I kind of was just like thinking like, okay, so they're going to share their story and it looks different than my story, but yet I still have so much brokenness in my own life and in my own marriage in ways that are different than what you guys are writing about in your book. But there's still so much truth to how God really does use our brokenness within our own selves to bring him glory and to do good and within our marriages. So I'd love if you guys would just start. You share pretty vulnerably in this book about your brokenness and what led you to Seacoast and what happened early on in your marriage. So I'd love for you to have a chance just to share a little bit about that with our listeners.
Yeah. Well, I think just to start, we really started our marriage. We got married young. And we thought really if anyone was going to take the world by storm and have the most incredible marriage ever, it would be us. Could have never foreseen the problems that would arise in every normal marriage, but I think just Reader's Digest version of our story is about 7 years in. We had just really gotten complacent in some ways. In some ways, we were still really hungry and trying to take new ground and working probably too hard. But complacent in some ways, and we always say the enemy is just kind of waiting like a lion in every person's story and life, and that definitely happened with us. And we know it was tender ground in many different ways. We were isolated from a lot of community. I had just had our third baby who was in the NICU, so we really were in a place of, and Josh was working a lot
and busyness. We just had a handful of rental properties. We were both getting our masters. When you're young, we got married at 20 and 21. We wanted to have a full day, full plate, run hard, and hit the bed feeling like we gave it our all, but in time, having kind of burn up any bit of capacity just kind of led us to a vulnerable place we really didn't see coming.
Yeah. And so Josh says he didn't see coming, but I started having an emotional affair probably a year before I ever confessed to Josh that I had given my heart to another man. And, I just remember during that year kind of dressing for him, longing for a different life, looking at their marriage with, just wanting so much more than what I felt like we had. And that really started to put a wedge between us. And that's what we tell so many couples, is that pretty much we believe every single couple needs to have a second marriage. Everybody grows up, everybody changes, everybody has to start again. But there are these certain situations where the entire ground before you is just crumbled. And a lot of that happens long before the actual act of whatever the betrayal is, whether in our case it was a betrayal, an affair, but that we've met with so many couples that it's been addiction or it's been hiding in any capacity. A lot of that happens long before you actually confess to it, which was definitely true of our story. But I ended up going to a Beth Moore simulcast, and I'm sitting in the back of the room, and she's like, "There's a woman here in a pit so deep," and I was like, "It's me, it's me." And so in our story, we were really good friends with the couple. And the woman came over that night and was telling us, like, something's wrong with my marriage. And she was crying. And it was the first time between, the Beth Moore and her that I just feel like the Holy Spirit just showed me the devastating thing that I was doing in our marriage and in someone else's. And so when she left that night, I said to Josh, like, what if it's me? That's all I said. And, oftentimes in any story that you've been in, you can get the courage to say this, like, first 10% of an iceberg. Like, what if I'm unhappy? What if I'm thinking about other people? What if I'm not living the life that I long for? And for us, what I'm so grateful for is that, Josh, there was so many reactions that happened in that, anger, unforgiveness that we had to get through, trust that was broken. But he definitely had this clear vision of, like, this is not something that we need to throw away. This is something that we can go to a new place. Like, we can have a new love. And so that vision really sustained us through some terrible months. I mean, we just say we went from counselor to counselor. He ended up getting fired from that church. We just felt like we were in no man's land, no community. But that vision really sustained us to say, like, what if it could be different? And so that led us to moving, to Charleston, things that we had always dreamed of that really weren't on the table. Oftentimes when you just get in these complacent places of life, couples, you just stop dreaming together. You stop taking risks. You stop trying to go after new things together. So when we were so broken and busted, it's like, you have nothing else to lose besides kind of taking this new ground. So that led us to come to Charleston. We never thought we'd do church ministry again, but we just wanted to be healthy. We wanted to have a healthy family.
As you were talking about
so
that,
that's really
as you were talking about that, Katie, it made me think that, like, I think we have listeners. I know we have listeners who have been in y'all's shoes, who've been in your situations. Even if it's not an affair, it is some other kind of brokenness, like you said, in a marriage. And the list is long of what it could be. And they often feel at that early moment, like if you go back to that night when you said, what if it's me? And then you had all the months after and all the disappointments with friends and family and shame and church and all this stuff. You said that Josh had this vision, like, no, we can be something different. I would imagine it wasn't that easy. As just like, oh no, Katie, like, don't worry. Like we can do something different. In that moment, in those months, what was it that kept you going, that kept you saying, okay, this is worth fighting for? Because Katie, I believe you said that even after that confession, it wasn't like everything was just like done and over and everything's okay. Like
Yeah.
you're working with still months and years of battling through this. What is it that made you guys go, you know what, this is worth it and we're not going to just throw in the towel?
I'd say it was probably different things for both of us, just because we were at very different places. And I think for me, I would say we've talked. You get through something and look back at it years later and question, could I do that now? And I think it's one of the reasons that, like, you have grace for today. God gives you what you need. Part of the reason He says, hey, don't worry about tomorrow. Like, you may not even get to tomorrow, but just focus on today. And I think God graced me with what I needed for that day and for that season. And I would say that's the same for every listener, that for wherever you are in your marriage, for whatever it is you're walking through, you can count on God to give you the grace you need to get through today, regardless of the hell that it may feel like. But I think just by God's grace, it was like what I knew about Katie is what I committed to at the altar, but it was at the altar I committed to all the things I didn't know. And when this came about, I think our dream had always been to finish strong together, to build a large family. We knew on our second date we both wanted to have 7 kids. It was like the make or break question. I think we had done enough dreaming about finishing well together, knowing that life is hard, that we're not going to get it all right, that when this came about, the commitment we made to each other, for better or for worse, I think we all say those words meaning them, not knowing what worse might feel like the day you get there. God just graced me to lean in, and it was never even a consideration. We say a lot of people leave long before they go, and it was kind of like Katie with what started as an emotional affair. She allowed her mind to start entertaining this idea of a future elsewhere. And so oftentimes people get so far down that path that physically leaving is painful and difficult, but an easier step because they've envisioned it wrong. And I think we had envisioned life together, that when crap hit the fan, it was like, well, here we are. So it's, so.
What was it for you, Katie?
And
Because you were on the other side of the table of the next conversation.
I honestly think it really was in part his vision and confidence that we could have a love that wasn't just like a pal, a chum. I think at this point, of our marriage, I knew the church answer was to stay together. I knew that good Christians were supposed to be together, but I couldn't fathom staying together forever with somebody that, like, I didn't have that love and those feelings with. And so I would come to him in the night with all these journals from when we were younger and say, like, I don't feel this way about you anymore. Like, I don't feel this connection to you. And he would say, that's what I want you to trust me for. Like, I believe that we can have that again. And I did not, so I really think his confidence and vision of, like, can you trust me that we could have this renewed love?
And even a lot of that was, I would say, God, in the sense of, like, the goal wasn't for us to fight to get back to a love we once had, because that the journals and nicknames and surface lust and affection was void of decision and commitment in the face of hard times, where the real intimacy is built. So then it was like, man, that was great love in that season, but I'm asking you to go to a new place. When you've felt pain, when you have to choose to love, like, man, that's where we're going to experience the power of God, the grace of God, and get to see Him. If this is what we built, like, can you only imagine what He could build if we would let ourselves go there? So.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you mean by that? Every couple needs that second marriage of this, like, okay, this is what we're going to look like on the other side of this, because that can feel, I mean, I think about some couples that Aaron and I have sat down with, and, they are just young and in love, and that person could never do any wrong. And, we're 22 years on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Not jaded by marriage by any chance, but we've just lived 22 years in marriage, and we've gone through really difficult things. And it's not like, oh, you guys are dumb, but there is this idea of like the reality of marriage sometimes kicks in years later. I mean, you know what I mean? And so is that to explain that second marriage thing to me?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. It's funny. We have two girls that are dating right now. And we just went on a trip with one of the girls and their boyfriends. And the boyfriend's like, taking her suitcase all through the airport. That and the same, just like you're saying, it's a different love. And there are things that I believe we have to be inspired by and learn when we look at these young couples and new marriages. But I do think what they can't feel is the safety. It's almost like that oak tree that has now it has this shade and the safety of love, of understanding each other, of growing differently together, of realizing the strengths and weaknesses, but also, wow, you changed in that. That I didn't expect that, letting each other have new longings. Like, oh, you have new passions, you have new dreams you want to take it on together. It really is important to rebuild. And I truly believe that in every marriage. Now, when you've come through devastating seasons, there's nothing on the ground. And so I think that's when you want to just throw in the towel, because you're like, wouldn't it be easier to start again? And I think that's our hope for couples is, like I said, we never thought we would get there, but if they are there, to realize that you really can rebuild from nothing, that with the same person.
Yeah.
Truly with the same person.
And I would say for me, and that's where I feel like both sides of our story can be really encouraging for other couples. And that I married 20-year-old Katie, excited to see what 40-year-old Mama Katie was going to look like, with no concept of what those dreams, desires, passions would look like, how she would change, or how my love and commitment to her would need to change as a result of that. All the while, I'm becoming a young professional, a property owner, a dad, all these things I've never done before. And so I, in a lot of ways, I was growing and changing myself. And so us going to a new place, looked new for both of us.
Yeah. I heard someone say one time, I can't remember who it was, that like you're going to be married to a bunch of different people throughout your lifetime, and that's the same person, and I think about that too. Aaron and I, we are both not completely, we're very different people than we were at 22 and 23 when we got married. And it's not that we've even grown apart. We've just kind of grown up, and we have turned into new people. And Aaron's not the same as he was when I started dating him at 21. And it's not bad, it's just different. And I think that is where the struggle comes in for a lot of marriages, when the two people they had this young in love with these people, and then 5, 10, 15 years later, they kind of have a hard time being with that new person. So I always wonder, and I'd love to hear from you guys, I always wonder, like, how do we in our marriages, how do we continue to, and I don't want to say be in love, because marriage, I love Aaron with everything in me, but our marriage cannot be based on just that alone, because life is so stinking hard that I need, like you said, Katie, I need that security. I need that safety. I need to know that we are here together through it all. How do we continue to grow towards each other when we're changing continually in our lives?
Yeah.
I think one thing that's unique, even going back to me growing and changing over those seasons, there were moments that I didn't realize in the moment they were happening, where I felt the need to be the man, to not verbalize fear or insecurity, to act like I had the answers. And so I would say what it looks like at 40 verse 20 to build intimacy is really vulnerable, and that it's counterintuitive. It would be great if it was travel experiences and concerts and shared moments and laughter.
That would be fun, wouldn't it, guys?
Yeah. And honestly, that's one of the difficult things, because none of us want to hang out in painful emotions. We would much rather do something fun. But if you want to build something that lasts a lifetime, if you want to build something that really cultivates intimacy, it's going to require you going places emotionally that are really uncomfortable for you. And I would say if it wasn't for Katie, I don't think I could have ever gotten there. It's like, man, I had vision for us finishing together. But apart from her, like, man, the number of times she's been like, hey, what are you thinking? Use words, like calling me out of my head and really prying into my heart. I'm a verbal processor, so it would take time and stumbling, fumbling through it to get it out. But yeah, I think what it looks like to build and experience intimacy is work and time and dialogue and each other. Like, it's not a smooth process, but it demands two people willing to work. And if one of you is fighting for intimacy and the other isn't, like, it's going to be a painful road to get there.
Well, and one of the things about our story, when I talk about your rebuilding from that rubble, is that we were forced, if we were going to survive and stay together, we were forced to really prioritize each other. The first good counsel that we got, the guy told us, you'll have a lot of relationships. I always loved girlfriends. I was raised by a single mom, have two sisters. I felt like my girlfriends were my heart and life and everything. And then my husband was like the accessory, And this guy told us, listen, you got to be a 10 in your marriage and everything else has to be a 2. And I remember thinking, like, not a chance. Yeah. Not a freaking chance. 10 to 2. But because of the season we were in, the painful season, we wouldn't have made it if we wouldn't have really prioritized. Like, we got to be in counseling. We've got to figure out why we're reacting like this, how we communicate, how we have fun together, how we stay curious, the things that light me up and the things that light him up. And we were forced to do that. But I think for any marriage that's trying to go to a new place, you really got to prioritize in that way. You know what? We are going to read this together. We're going to get in counseling together. We're going to figure out, be curious about each other, get curious about our reactions, our inner emotions, our inner thought lives. It takes that much focus.
And what was unique about the 10 and 2 in that season, that you would never label this as drift or like really important to note for concern. But there'd be so many things, good days, bad days, where Katie would leave work, get in the car and call whichever girlfriend, sister it was. And then a couple days later, it would come up and she'd say, I told you about that. And I'm thinking, like, I have never heard that in my life. I have no clue what you're talking about. But it's because she had processed it with a couple girlfriends. And so it's not to say you can't have best friends that guys or girls, and your spouse isn't meant to replace them. But in terms of the priority, and I want to be the first call she makes when she is over with something. I want to be the first call she makes when she's crushed for something, because I want to celebrate with her. I want to hurt with her. And so it forced a discipline on our parts to put each other first and ultimately fight for each other.
I know I've said this in this episode, and I'll probably say it again, that these conversations, I don't want anyone to think like, oh, these are conversations if someone has had an affair, or these are conversations. Like, I just think these are conversations that marriages need to be happening. I remember I've shared this story a lot on the podcast, but Aaron and I had been married for like a year, and one of his former roommates called him and told him that his parents were getting a divorce after 25 years. And here I am, like, literal newlywed, less than a year married. And in my brain, I thought to myself, I can't even comprehend this. Like, I don't know how you put 25 years in and then walk away. And I always say, being married for 22 years, I know exactly how that happens now. Like, I know exactly how it happens. And it's the drifting. It's what you just said, Josh. It's the drifting. It's not even a massive thing usually. It's the small things over 20 years. And so I think it's important for marriages, if you've been married a year, like you just got home from your honeymoon this weekend, or you've been married for 30 years, like, these are important things because it affects our marriage right where it is today, and it affects where it will be tomorrow and in 5 years. You guys have this method you call STAY. I would love for you to break that down for us real quick. What do you mean? What are the acronyms stand for the word STAY?
Yeah, so STAY is start with me, take quitting off the table, allow others to be a part of your journey, and then yield to vision. So, and basically the way that principle breaks down is just practical tools for if you find yourself wanting to go to a new place in your marriage. what's the roadmap?
Mm.
And so the first section of the book about Start With Me is just learning how to really stop blame shifting, stop making your life someone else's responsibility, your joy, your passions, your happiness, to really look at yourself, and then to be able to say, like, am I living the life that God designed for me to live?
Yeah.
And putting that self responsibility on you. And then the take quitting off the table is the whole concept of we leave long before we ever actually leave. And so some of those practical tools are what you're talking about with the drift. You know, I have these 20-year-olds on my team and they've just gotten married. They send gifts or gifs, whatever you call it,
I don't know how
to
to
their
say
husband.
it, but yes.
And the other night we were in a hot tub and they were like, aren't you going to send your husband a butt over the water picture? I was like, no, I've never even heard of that, whatever. But like, it's those kind of things that when you take quitting off the table, when you say like, this is the garden that God's given us and we're going to prioritize it. We're going to put focus on it. We're going to do the right actions, that are really going to help us to get through. It's real practical things in that.
That's even with early on arguments, just the word divorce is it can come out. And so it meant like changing the way we talk and really committing that, hey, this isn't even when you take it off the table, it's not an option for the future. So A is allow others to be a part of your story. And we had a lot of friends, but no one that really knew us. And so that's really about surrounding yourself with people that love you, but aren't all that impressed with you. Mentors, folks that can speak into your life and spur you on into becoming the couple that you dream to be. It's again counterintuitive to think that you could build that apart from others when you are the couple. But man, we all need people to help get there. And then yield to vision. Vision's one of those things that our lives are busy. If 20 years of marriage teaches you anything, it's like parenting never stops. The bills, the house, the job, life is busy. Vision is one of those things you have to really give yourself over to dream about. Okay, God, what have you put in my heart? What do we see for ourselves? What does it look like? To help you paint a picture, of the target as to what does a win look like? God, where are you calling us to help your days be building towards somewhere that he's taken you?
I think it's, I love that one because Aaron and I are in a stage where our youngest is a sophomore. So you guys have a lot of kids, and I think you have older kids than me, but you guys will still be parenting for longer than me because how old is your youngest?
Two.
That's what I thought.
Hey, they'll all be out of the house when we're 59. And
Okay.
so we're stoked.
You're stoked. I love it. But I was going to say, we're in this unique season. Well, it's unique for us. We're just now entering into it. And where our youngest is 15. And so we kind of we've always kind of dreamed like you guys have. I love hearing that. Like Aaron and I have always big dreamers about our marriage, about ourselves. But now we're entering the stage where we're like, oh wait, this is a reality. Like if these kids all go to college and they all leave like they're supposed to or whatever, we will be here by ourselves in, 5-6 years. And Aaron and I are loving this dreaming, not because we don't want our kids here, not because we don't like our kids, but because we really are catching a vision for what God's going to do in our own lives and our marriage in our 50s. We say all the time, our 50s are going to be like, it's going to be our best decade yet. Like, we're just going to be like on fire for you, God. What do you want? But I love that vision. And I think it is so important for marriages. And I don't know about you guys, but I see a lot of marriages get into this stale place when their kids get about my kids' age or middle school and high school, because it can become so child focused that they lose that focus on each other. And that's what happened to my friends, to Aaron's roommate's parents. The kids they all left. And so then the husband and wife were sitting there looking at each other like, well, who are you? And so we are just, I love that last one, yield division, but I love that whole concept of really kind of dreaming together.
Another reason that happens is that the word disciple literally means learner, and kind of like your question earlier of how do you build intimacy. When you're young, you're learning everything, but the older you get, the lie or the pride that creeps up in you is that I'm an adult, I should know the answer, we should know how to do this. And so when you see couples that have been married 20-30 years lose intimacy and part ways, a lot of it is because they've stopped being learners
of each
and
other.
so a big part of it, they've stopped learning from other couples. They've stopped learning about each other and how they've changed. And so I feel like learning with your spouse and from other couples is such a valuable indicator of if you're trying to gauge where are we at, like who are we learning from? Like what other couples? I think about Jim and Martha, well, that live on mission. Like, man, they are 20, 30 years older than us, and we look at their lives and think, man, how do we get there? We ask them those kind of questions at dinner. And so just learning from others and learning about each other is a big indicator of are we moving in the right direction, building the intimacy we want.
Yeah, and the vision one gets so practical because one of our things is we came up with our grandparent names.
I was going to ask really you, early, and I love them.
I know, we always talk about that our kids, we don't want somebody just like randomly calling us Peepaw. That's what we had for Josh's dad that just came out. But we use that so practically to be like, okay, what kind of woman is Ruby? Our grandparent names are Ruby and Bear, and we'll say like, what do they like to do together? How are they? And I always tell Josh, like, I see Bear as like this soft grandparently. He's like a 007. I mean, the man is ready to kill someone at all times. The opposite of like soft, whatever. And so, and I always say like Ruby is wise and self-controlled. I feel so opposite from that most days, like a hot mess express. So,
or I just sent her a reel yesterday. I don't know if you saw it yet. It was this couple that had been married for 80 years. And the woman is saying, he always wants my body. And I was like, what are Bear and Ruby like?
That's it.
Let me show you.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that too.
Yes. And when you get those practical questions, like those are in the book of just helping you take this vision retreat with each other. But other couples have inspired us so much. We met a couple the other day that took a year off, just like, you and Aaron, as soon as the kids left the house, they took a year to just travel and be together. They called it a gap year.
Listen,
and
Katie,
I was like,
if you look at my Instagram, you know how when you look at your Instagram and it shows you all the things you look at, I want Aaron and I to get one of those Sprinter vans that you sleep in. And I want us to just drive from national park to national park. Just me and him we'll take our dogs too. They're invited, but that's it. And just spend I tell him all the time, like, babe, I want a Sprinter van and I want the national parks and I just want to drive.
Dream. That is a dream. Yeah. And see, when people hear stuff like that, some people have no concept for that. Hear others lead them to new places of vision and dreaming.
Yeah.
And so it really is important. And you usually have one person in the marriage that's more of a dreamer and more of a visionary, and one person that's not. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing to help get on the same page with that.
As I'm sitting here thinking about, you guys and your grandparent names and me and Aaron wanting to travel around to national parks, it makes me think like those are big, far off, and I don't know if it'll happen. It'll be fun, right? I don't even like to camp, so I don't even know why this is exciting to me, but I just like to be with Aaron, so there's that. But I think even like for people who are listening are like, okay, that's great. You want to go to the national park. You guys know your grandparent names. We don't even like each other. I think there's a little bit of like, what would it look like to just dream about, like, and this sounds silly, but like, what did it look like to dream about? Like, what do you want your Saturday mornings to look like? And how can we make them different? Like, how can we can we have coffee on the porch together one Saturday, and just sit? I think even small dreams like that. I don't know if you guys feel that as well, but sometimes like we just need these, like, how do we vision? We think like, this is my kids. I have 2 kids that are seniors. So I'm envisioning a lot. What do I want this last year to look like with me and these kids? And I think we can do the same thing in our marriages. What do we want this year to look like? What can we envision for this year?
Totally. We have this one question that we ask, and we talk about this in the book, but it just says, what are the top 3 things that you need to have an ideal week? You would know how practical and easy that question is to ask each other and how different your answers will be. So like when we asked this, Josh's was like, he wanted to play basketball every week with his friends. He wanted to have sex, and he wanted to work on a project around the house on like a Saturday. Mine were polar opposite. It was, I wanted a clean house, I wanted a date night, and I wanted a day with no plans. So polar opposite questions to have your ideal week. But things like that really do help you to start practically getting on the same page. Because I'm like, I tell him, I don't want you to don't put basketball on the chopping block. Like, you need this time with your guy friends. And then he could tell me like, no, we are going to have a housekeeper. This is something that really makes your life a lot better.
Yeah.
And so I just think for couples to really, just like you're saying, the Saturday morning is the most important way to dream.
And I think if you're at a place with your spouse where dreaming feels foreign, like another way we talk about that in the book is to dialogue daily, date weekly, and retreat quarterly. And so when you have some basic steps that are going to build intimacy in time, like it's one thing for you to talk each day about the logistics, who's picking up the kid, what are we having for dinner, but that's not going to be a relationship. And for us, it's often walking the dog at night after the kids go down to kind of pray or something you've been struggling with, and that's a safe space for us. So I can say like, hey, you've seemed tender today, what's up, you know, and not locked in eye to eye, we're moving forward on a walk, and it's a safe place to start. And so I think a lot of those basic behaviors that just because of busyness we can lose in time, that in the book, when you just start doing the basics again of working on your marriage, it's amazing how it'll ignite this ability to dream of like, hey, what if we went to all the national parks in a Sprinter van? And ultimately for you, that's not like, I'm going to be a mountain mama. You know, it's that I want, when our kids want our lives to still be an epic adventure, and I want to do it with you.
Yeah.
And the box I see that with some patches. You know,
I like it. I like it.
You start.
I love it so much. You know, Aaron and I have worked some things out on walks. I mean, we love going on walks together. We have worked it out. You guys tell us the name of your book and all that kind of stuff so that people know about it.
It's called New Marriage, Same Couple. And truly, it is just our heart and hope that people could read it if they are in a just desperate place or a hopeless place, because we should not have this incredible marriage and love and joy and be each other's favorite person. We shouldn't, you know, and I just think sometimes you think it just takes the right couple or the right personalities, or maybe we're just not meant for each other. And the truth of this book is that every single couple, we really believe every single couple that that wants to can have a new marriage and rebuild. And so it's a vulnerable, raw, gritty account of some really hard times, but hopefully also so hope-filled that if God can do it for us, he can 100% do it for you, you know?
Yeah. And I'd say for, early on, bounced around 4 or 5 different counselors. We had a hard time finding community and counsel for somebody to walk with us. So I feel like the good stuff of the book is actually found in the workbook, because it's where you're able to personalize it. So whether it's an affair, whether it's been 20, 30 years of marriage and you're just feeling some drift and saying, hey, let's start fresh. I'm going to re-up on the marriage we've always wanted. Wherever you are, the workbook is what's going to help you contextualize it and really help see your marriage go to a new place.
I love that. Well, I'm grateful for the work that you guys are doing and for this book being out to the world. I say all the time, I believe in marriage. I think it is a kind gift that God has given some of us. And I'm grateful for you guys sharing your story. Katie, I want to know about Francis Benedict. Can you tell us just a little bit about what you guys have going on these days?
Yes. Well, I'd love for anybody to check it out. It's just francisbenedict.com. You can see about the for-profit and the sales of the fashion line and also the nonprofit. So we actually have a team of seamstresses in Togo, West Africa that are employed full-time. They have education, nutrition, housing, transportation that all happen by the sale of these products. Our daughter is over there right now, living over there and serving with the children. We have a child care center for the kids that are not in school. And so she's working with them, but we sell high fashion items that we hope you would love to wear to any events or any fun date night. We have skirts, we have dresses. So it's been a great joy. We've been going about 8 years, and I feel like we're just getting started. Babies in the world of small business. So that's Francis and Benedict.
Well, I love it. I've loved your stuff forever. And for you guys that don't know, Katie and Jess Conley are sisters. Jess has been on the show a ton of times and love Jess so much. You guys, thank you so much. I'd love to know, what are you guys reading these days?
Well, I'm the most boring reader ever because I love nonfiction. So I have about, I like to do like 2 to 3 audibles a week. And so currently I'm reading a book called Traction. It's about an entrepreneurial operating system. It's incredible. And we also just led a book study through the book Go Giver for Marriage. So Go Giver is a business book. They also have one for marriages that is phenomenal. Yeah. So we've just been leading a book study through that. But do you have anything that's a little more fun than that?
I don't know that I would say fun. I'm kind of the same. Couple different books. Working Genius, kind of looking into me, what makes me unique. Meta Church, a lot of what I do here at Seacoast is kind of digital ministry as an extension of our faith journey. So kind of dreaming, reading, studying about what that would look like. And then for us with the book and our brand Made to Stick, just going back to some marketing, branding, what does that look like for us now? So a little bit of a couple different things.
That's so
yeah,
great.
We're boring.
No, you're not boring. I'm reading Longing to Know. This is for school, you guys. Longing to Know, the Philosophy of Knowledge for Ordinary People. I'm actually I'm listening to it on Audible as well because
wonderful.
They said you have to have this whole book read by next week. And I was like, well, I'm going to have to listen to this on my walks. That's what I'm going to have to do. So there you go. Katie and Josh, I'm so grateful for you guys and your ministry and your book. And so thanks for coming on the happy hour.
We are grateful
Thanks
for you. Thank you so much, Jamie.
Hey friends, I hope you love this conversation as much as I did. To make sure that you never miss any of the happy hour conversations, go ahead and hit the subscribe button below to make sure you're notified every time we release a new episode. And if you want more content today, click on those videos over there. I think you're going to like them just as much as you like the one today.